Hi, in this video we are going to be talking about faults and folds. Okay, so if we look at the definition for faults in the internet, it says that faults are cracks in the Earth's crust along which there is movement. Okay, so here we have pictures of such examples. So you can see here, this is a satellite image from above the Earth, somewhere near China, and you can really see that you have these structures, rock structures, on the right side, and you have these rock structures on the left side, and you can really see that there is some displacement between the two because these layers here should have been continued. So you can see that if we were to move this, they would have formed a continuous pattern, right? And as you can see, there is some displacement, so there is a movement, so that's what we call a fault. So here we also have another example. So you can see this layer here should have been continued here, but there is kind of a displacement along this line here. So there's a displacement, so that's a fault, right? And also this one, you can really see that these structures are displaced along this line here. So a fault is kind of a place where there's a crack and there's a movement along that crack. And that is prominently, obviously, created in boundaries, right? Because in boundaries, you have things that are converging or things that are diverging or things that are moving alongside. But obviously, faults are prominent in transform fault boundaries because when you have two plates that are moving side by side, brushing each other, you can really see displacement between the two. Now, I'm not saying that faults do not happen in other types of boundaries, but it's very prominent in transform fault boundaries because when you have transform fault boundaries, you can really see the displacement between alignment of two plates, right? So these things here, these things such as like that, such as this, obviously it's more emphasized in this satellite picture because you see the satellite picture is taken from above, so you can really see the two plates taken from the bird's eye view. The two plates kind of slide past each other and they are not aligned anymore, as evidenced by the rock structures displaced here. So that's what we call a fault, right? Now, how about a fold? A fold, according to one, according to the definition from the internet, is simply the deformation of a rock structure. So the gradual deformation of rock structure. So these are examples of a fold, right? So you can see this rock structure should be, layers which are um, vertically stacked. So these should form horizontal lines. But as you can see here, the horizontal lines are kind of deformed. So that's a fold. This is an example of a fold, right? This is another example of a fold. So you can form like curves and stuff like that, right? And again, this is formed every time there is some type of stress. So it could occur in, for example, convergent boundaries. So when you have convergent boundaries, two plates move onto each other and they kind of deform the rock structures here, forming those folds, right? But more prominently, it is what is formed in transform boundaries because have if you imagine this is one plate and this is another plate, right? This is one plate and another plate. As they slide past each other, if you notice what happens to my skin here, there is some wrinkling because of the pressure. So that wrinkling, this here, forms those folds, and you find rock structures that are kind of folded into what we call synclaires. So in arches and anti-arches. So in synclines and not synclaires. I said synclaires, but in synclines and anti-synclines, right? So that is what is a fold. So I will pull up here San Andreas Fault, a famous picture of San Andreas Fault. I'm sorry, I'm not showing my screen, but if I show you that picture, especially this one, you can really see that here you have these folds. You have this like wrinkled pattern on the sides. And again, that wrinkled pattern is because of this. This slides this way, this slides that way, and you form those wrinkling effect on the sides because of the sidewards force. See the wrinkling effect? And that's what you see here. So you see small you can say hills, not really mountainous, not really mountains, not in the scale of mountains, but you can see kind of folds that form hills, small depressions like that. And also you can see faults. So folds and faults usually are more prominently um, manifested by transform boundaries, right? Now, again, I'm not saying they don't occur in other boundaries because, again, when you have convergent boundaries, as the materials crumple up, obviously there's some faulting that happens. Some things are not aligned, but in this case, they will be vertically misaligned, and there will be some folding of the rock layers, right? But insofar as horizontal faulting, meaning faults that we can really see from the sky, right? When we can really see two plates, and then these two plates have a rock structure that's supposed to exist here, and then now we see the second plate and the rock structure is continued, but there's a horizontal misalignment, then that's really a sign of a transform boundary. And again, folds can also happen in other types of boundaries, as you can imagine, but more prominently, they are in transform boundaries because, again, as the two plates slide past each other, you will see kind of the edge of the boundary being dragged, and therefore you form like deformations, like wrinkling effect of the sides. And again, that's what you see here in uh, San Andreas transform fault. So that is it about faults and folds. They occur in other plate boundaries, but most prominently they are featured in transform boundaries.